In the year 1695, right here in the parish of Rerrick by Auchencairn, a poor family were plagued by a truly unruly spirit. Long before Ringcroft of Stocking was ruined, Andrew Mackie found his beasts set loose on a February morning. Their bindings had been deliberately broken. The next night he tied them with stronger bindings, but his beasts were loose again in the morning. One morning he found one of his beasts tied to the back of the cottage with a hair tedder, or a rope made of hair. It was well known that witches used these ropes for witchcraft. The poor creature was tied up so tightly that it could not move at all, even though its feet were still touching the ground. Then, when the family were sleeping, peats were stuck up in the middle of the house floor and set fire to. The smoke woke them and saved them, for the house would have been burned to the ground. By March, the ghost had begun to throw stones about the cottage. One day, the children came in from outside to see a figure wrapped in the youngest child's blanket sat beside the fire. The youngest, obviously being braver than the others, crossed himself and snatched the blanket back from the figure. Their minister, Mr Telfer, stayed and prayed with them afterwards. All seemed well until he was leaving, when the spirit began to throw stones inside the cottage again. The minister went back in to pray with them again and was hit by stones himself this time. The minister returned to stay the night. Stones were thrown at him and he was struck by a staff. Then the ghost spent the night tapping on chests and boards. While the minister was praying, he felt something touch him. He looked down, and a small white hand attached to a disembodied forearm was grasping his arm. The ghost continued to grow in strength and aggression. It still threw stones, but also began beating the family and their visitors with staves after this, forcing its victims outside. Others were not even allowed into the house and were attacked in the yard. It also began to grab at people's clothes. It even lifted the bedclothes off the children during the night and hit them with invisible hands. It grabbed the miller from Auchencairn so hard that he was afraid that he would be torn in half. Objects were seen flying about the house as if they were being carried by someone invisible. Chests and bedsides were rattled. A voice was heard at night, crying, "Whisht, whisht," whenever someone tried to pray. It also whistled, confusing the family's dog. The minister of Kells, Andrew Ewart, and the minister of Crossmichael, John Murdo, were called in to try and help. It hit Andrew Ewart on the head, making him bleed. It also hit John Murdo, bruising and wounding him. It threw burning peats at them while they prayed. Then the roof was set on fire. As they rose from praying all night long, stones rained down on their heads inside the cottage. Then, on the 6th of April, Andrew Mackie's wife investigated a loose stone at the cottage door. Underneath it, she uncovered a bundle of 7 small bones covered in blood and flesh and wrapped in paper. The blood was fresh. Frightened, the wife ran to their landlord's house at nearby Cullen Mill. The ghost was angered, throwing stones and fireballs around the house. Charles McKellen came from Cullen to the cottage to remove the bones. He prayed as he worked, and the ghost was infuriated. It threw a hot stone in the bed between the children. As that burned the bedclothes, the ghost thrust a staff into the wall of the house above their bed. When Charles McKellen lifted up the bones, the ghost suddenly stopped, terrorising the children. But the next day it set fire to the house twice, although they were swiftly put out with help from the neighbours, thankfully. Then Andrew Mackie discovered a letter written in blood in the close by the cottage. On the back of the letter was written, 3 years thou shalt have to repent, and knit it well. Inside the letter it read,
Woe be to the Scotland, repent at that warning, for the doors of heaven are already barred against thee. I sent for a warning to thee to flee to God, yet troubled shall this man be for 20 days. Repent, 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 Scotland, or else thou shalt.
The ghost became much more powerful. It threw stones and other objects, grabbed people, kicked them, whistled, cried and moaned. By the 16th of April, the family were forced to flee the house. While they were gone, the ghost attacked their cattle instead. They returned on the 18th, but were only left in peace until the next day, when the ghost set fire to the straw in the barn. As Andrew Mackie tried to put it out, it shot staves through the wall at him, but he wasn't hurt. It began to talk to and threaten the family and their neighbours, telling them it had been sent on a commission from God to warn the land to repent. It pulled a child from bed at night and said if I had a commission to, I would brain them. Then, finally, on the 1st of May, it set fire to the sheep house, burning it to the ground. The sheep were rescued unharmed, and this was the last recorded action of the Rerrick ghost. Maybe its power was spent, or maybe its commission was fulfilled, but we can never truly know what put an end to its reign of terror during that spring of 1695.